Florence, 1527. The hour is neither night nor morning. Some liminal hush in between. The world holds its breath. Even the marble seems to shiver. Candlelight stains the walls, trembling against the weight of centuries. The Medici Palace, a fortress of carved stone and locked doors, is silent. The kind of silence that feels intentional, like a secret held too tightly. A corridor stretches into darkness, lined with portraits whose eyes never close. At the far end, a child stands, her small hands pressed to the cold sill of a window that opens onto nothing but fog, and the distant muffled toll of church bells, her hair black as spilled ink is unbound. Her dress is too fine for comfort, the fabric stiff and unfamiliar. Against her skin, she does not cry. Children of exile learn early that tears are wasted in empty halls. In the chamber behind her, a letter lies half-written on a desk. The words are careful, the handwriting precise. A message meant for Romeo, perhaps for no one at all. It is a request, a playa calculation. The ink is barely dry, but already its meaning is obsolete. History moves faster than hope. Outside, the city is under siege. Inside, there is only waiting. Waiting for news, for footsteps, for the next command. The girl listens to the silence. She knows, and now, that affection is conditional. Promises are as fragile as glass. She has learned to measure love in glances, and the absence of raised voices. She has learned that survival is quieter than devotion. Her name is Catherine. She does not yet know what she will become. But already the labyrinth is closing around her. The Medici name is a currency. But in these months, its value is slipping coin by coin favor. By favor, Catherine sits at a table too large for her, surrounded by men whose voices are velvet and whose eyes are knives. They speak in low tones, every word weighed and measured. The child is present because she is necessary, not because she is wanted. Your uncle believes you are the key Madonna, Caterina. All Florence waits for your obedience. The words are gentle. The meaning is not. Catherine's hands are folded, motionless. She has been taught to listen, to let silence fill the spaces where protest might live. Across from Hera, Cusina, boy old enough to be cruel, young enough to enjoy its smiles, without warmth. We will send another letter. You will write it. Caterina, the Pope trusts your hand. The table is set as if for a feast, but the plates are empty. Servants move in the shadows, silent as regrets. Catherine bows her head. She does not answer, but she does not refuse. Refusal is a luxury for those whose names are not bargaining chips. In the hall, beyond doors open and close with the finality of verdicts. Every arrival is an omen, every departure a warning. Catherine has learned to read the language of glances, the way a servant's eyes flicker toward the door, the way a cousin's smile fades when the cardinal's voice sharpens. Tonight, the city is restless. The palace is a fortress, but the walls are thin. Catherine feels the pressure in her chest, a weight that is not quite fear and not quite hope. She knows she is watched, measured, and judged. She knows that her value is not in who she is, but in what she can be made to do. The conversation ends with a nod, a gesture as cold as the marble beneath her feet. Catherine is dismissed, but not forgotten. She walks from the room, her steps echoing in the corridor. In this house, power is a whisper, and survival is learned in silence. There is a memory she cannot banish. It returns in quiet moments when the candle gutters and the world contracts to the sound of her own breath. A night when the city burned. The Medici banners torn from their posts. The palace gates splintered beneath the weight of the mob. Catherine, barely 5, hidden in a convent cell. The nuns' faces pale and cold. She remembers the scrape of the bolt as the door was locked. She remembers the prayers whispered through the night. Words meant to comfort, but thick with dread. Outside, the world shifted inside. She learned the true currency of power. To be invisible, to be forgotten, to become a shadow in her own life. She remembers the taste of fear, metallic and bitter like blood on the tongue. She remembers the promise she made to herself. In the darkness, in the silence, never again helpless, never again unseen. History remembers the Medici as patrons, tyrants, kings. It rarely remembers the child locked away, listening for footsteps that never came. Now, the city is lost. The Medici have fallen. For the moment, Florence has declared itself free. Catherine is a hostage, her blood a guarantee her life. A message. The convent is her prison. The nuns are her jailers outside. The banners have changed, but inside the rules remain. Catherine is summoned to the abbess's chamber, a room heavy with the scent of wax and old paper. The men have come. You must be brave, child. Catherine nods. She has practiced bravery in the dark, in the silence, in the absence of comfort. She follows the abbess through stone corridors, her feet bare on cold flagstones. At the door, soldiers waitmen with eyes like shuttered windows. They bow, but there is no respect in the gesture. A letter is pressed into her hand. You will write what they dictate. You will smile when told. The soldiers lead her through the city, past faces twisted with hunger and hate. She is paraded through streets that once belonged to her family. She sees her name scrawled in ash on ruined walls. She sees children her own age, eyes hollow with envy and fear in the council. Chambermen argue over her fate as if she were a relica. Coin a debt to be collected, they do not speak to her only about her. She listens, learns, memorizes every slight, every threat, every promise made and broken. When the decision is made, it happens quietly. The door closes behind her. She is no longer a Medici, but a pawn. The council believes they have won. They do not see the calculation in her eyes, the vow hardening in her chest. A knife can be turned without blood. A child can become a weapon without ever raising her voice. History will call it exile. Catherine will remember it as the day she learned to play God. Night falls over Florence like a shroud. In her cell, Catherine sits by the window, watching the city dissolve into darkness. The candle burns low, casting shadows that move with the slow, deliberate patience of regret. She is alone now, the silence pressing in. She thinks of the letter she wrote, the words not her own. She thinks of the faces that watched her, judged her, used her. She thinks of the promise she made in the darkness that she would never be powerless again. Outside, the bells toll for vespers inside. Catherine's resolve settles like dust on stone. How far can a child bend before she breaks? The candle sputters, the city sleeps in the quiet. Catherine de Medici begins to sharpen her silence into something that will one day cut the world. The corridors of the Château de Fontainebleau do not sleep. They breathe, exhaling the chill of ancient stone, drawing in the fog that slips through arrow-slit windows. Candles gutter in their sconces, their flames trembling as if in anticipation. The kind of silence that feels intentional, heavy as if the walls themselves are listening for a secret they have heard too many times before. A procession moves through this hush, its footsteps muffled by thick Florentine velvet. At its center, a young woman walks, her hands clasped so tightly the knuckles are bone white beneath the rings. Her dress is black, though the occasion demands gold. Her eyes do not search the faces around her. They are fixed instead on the floor, on the pattern of cold flagstones, as if counting each step as a measure of exile. She is watched, always watched. The courtiers, the servants, the priests, the painted faces behind every half-closed door. Their stares are knives, but their words are honey. She is a guest here, they say a bride. But she knows the truth. A guest can leave. A bride is a hostage, dressed in silk. In her right hand, a letter. Its seal unbroken, its message unread. The ink is still wet, but the decision has long since dried. She does not tremble. To tremble is to be noticed. To be noticed is to be devoured. Somewhere a bell tolls. Not for her, not yet. But the sound echoes through the stone. A reminder that time is a cage, and every moment is a link in its chain. Catherine de Medici does not flinch. She walks deeper into the labyrinth. Each step a quiet defiance. She will not be devoured, not tonight. The marriage chamber is colder than the corridors. Here the tapestries hang heavy with the dust of old triumphs and older betrayals. The air is perfumed, but beneath the rosewater lingers something metallic, something that will not wash away. King Henry II sits in shadow, his crown set aside his eyes. Unreadable. Between them, a table. On it, a chessboard. The pieces have not moved. They never do. Diane de Poitiers stands by the window, her silhouette sharp against the pale dawn. She is older, but the court does not see it. They see only her certainty. The easy curve of her smile, the way she touches Henry's shoulder as if it belongs to her. In this room, it does. Catherine stands. She does not sit unless invited. A lesson learned early, reinforced by every glance, every silence. She waits, hands folded, the letter still hidden in her sleeve. Henry speaks without looking at her. His voice is soft, almost gentle, but each word lands with the weight of a stone. You are to send word to Florence. Tell them you are content. The command is not a request. It is not even a test. It is a ritual. Catherine inclines her head, the gesture practiced empty. The letter in her sleeve grows heavier. Diane's eyes flicker, amusement perhaps, or warning. She says nothing, but her silence is a presence. A reminder that love in this palace is a weapon wielded by others. Catherine's marriage is a transaction. Her loyalty, a currency to be spent by those with real power. A servant enters, head bowed, and sets a goblet before Catherine. The wine is dark, almost black in the candlelight. She does not drink. Henry's gaze sharpens. Is it not to your taste, madame? Catherine meets his eyes at last. There is no tremor in her voice. I am learning, Your Majesty. Everything is an acquired taste. A pause, the kind that stretches cold and deliberate. Diane's fingers tighten on the windowsill. The king says nothing. The servant withdraws the door, closing with a soft click. That sounds to Catherine like the turning of a key. In this room, nothing is given. Everything is taken. There are nights when the darkness is absolute, when even the memory of light is suspect. In those hours, Catherine recalls Florence, not the city of artists and marble, but the orphanage, where she learned the value of silence. She was 8 when the riots came. The Medici crest was a death sentence, and the mob did not care for children. She remembers the iron taste of fear, the way the nuns whispered behind locked doors. She remembers the promises, "You are safe here, you are loved." Promises that dissolved with the first stone thrown through stained glass. She watched as friends vanished, taken in the night, sent to distant relatives, or simply never spoken of again. She learned to listen for footsteps, to measure each word, to smile when she wanted to scream. She learned that affection was a coin, and she was always in someone else's debt. One night she pressed her ear to the door and heard her name spoken in the language of transaction. Keep her alive for now. She may be useful. That was the night she stopped believing in sanctuary. That was the night she began to survive. The letter waits on her writing desk, the seal a Medici read. Outside the palace is hushed. The only sound, the distant clatter of armor. A reminder that peace here is always conditional. Catherine sits alone, quill poised, the candle's flame flickering as if it too is uncertain. The message she is meant to send is simple. I am content. I am honored. France is my home. But the ink will not flow. She thinks of Florence, of the orphanage, of the way a single word can mean life or death. She thinks of Diane, her perfume lingering in every corridor, her laughter echoing in Henry's chambers. She thinks of her own face in the mirror, the eyes that have seen too much too soon. She begins to write. The words are careful, measured a performance for an audience she cannot see. To my uncle, His Holiness the Pope. France is gracious. The king is kind. I am learning to love this land as my own. The lie is flawless, but beneath the surface, another message takes shape. One only the Medici will understand. She weaves it into the phrasing, the rhythm, the choice of ink and paper. A warning disguised as gratitude, a plea disguised as loyalty. She seals the letter, presses her ring into the wax. The Medici crest is clear, but the meaning is buried, waiting for the right eyes. As she hands the letter to the waiting courier, she does not smile, she does not weep. She simply watches as the door closes behind him, and with it any hope of rescue. The palace understands the message, though it is never spoken aloud. Catherine de Medici will not be a pawn, not for Florence, not for France, and not for the woman who stands at her husband's side. The next morning, Diane's favorite maid is dismissed without warning. No explanation is given, but the court understands. Night falls heavy, pressing against the stained glass, and carved wood smothering the last embers of day. Catherine sits by her window, the candle burning low, the wax pooling like spilled blood on the sill. The letter is gone. The maid is gone. The silence remains. She does not pray. She does not sleep. Instead, she listens to the wind in the chimneys, to the distant footsteps in the corridor, to the sound of her own breath measured and slow. History remembers the crown. It rarely remembers the cost. In the quieting, Catherine traces the scar on her heart, the one no seamstress can mend. She knows now. Loyalty is a currency, and she has paid the price. Love is a weapon, and she has learned to bleed without making a sound. Outside, the fog thickens, swallowing the moon. Inside, Catherine waits, unseen, unbroken, and more dangerous than ever. How far can a woman bend before she breaks? Tonight, the answer is written in silence. And in the darkness, the labyrinth waits for her next move content. Candlelight trembles along the length of a corridor, lined with tapestries. They're woven saints and sinners caught in perpetual judgment. The air is thick with the scent of wax and old stone. Cold, unyielding a silence that feels intentional. Shadows gather in the corners, soft as velvet, but edged with threat. The hour is late. The palace does not sleep. It waits. A woman stands in the half-light, her hands folded in front of her, posture perfect as the marble saints above the chapel doors. She listens not to music or laughter, but to the hush between footsteps, the breathless pause before a servant dares knock. Her presence is a question the court cannot answer. A letter lies open on her desk, the ink still wet, the words composed with the careful venom of someone who knows how little the truth is worth. The script is fine, elegant, but the message is a blade sheathed in civility. Outside, the fog curls against the window panes, as if trying to see what history will choose to remember. She is not alone, not truly. The walls themselves seem to watch her, weighted with secrets. Every echo in these halls is a rumor, every reflection a warning. Her name is Catherine, but in this moment caught between candle and shadow, she is only what the court fears and what it needs, a queen with no illusions left. Somewhere in the palace, a door closes with the finality of a tomb. The silence that follows is not peace, but anticipation. Tonight, alliances will be forged and broken in whispers. Tonight, power is the only light that endures. Morning brings no warmth, only a pale, indifferent sun filtering through leaded glass. In the council chamber, the air is colder still. The king presides, but the true contest is played out in glances and gloved hands. Diane de Poitiers sits at his right, her beauty undiminished by years, her smile a study in practiced restraint. She wears black and pearls, as if mourning a future she intends to inherit. Catherine sits across from her, the queen by title, the outsider by design. Her face is unreadable, lips pressed into a line that hints at neither surrender nor defiance. The courtiers watch them both, their loyalties as shifting as the candlelight. The king speaks of treaties and taxes, his words falling like dust on stone. Diane leans in her voice, a ripple beneath his, "Your Majesty, the Italian merchants are restless." Perhaps the queen might reassure them. She speaks their tongue after all. A compliment offered like a poisoned cup. Catherine inclines her head, the gesture slow, deliberate. Of course, I am always eager to serve the realm. Her Italian is flawless. her French sharper than any blade. She does not look at Diane, but the message is clear. I know what you are. I know what you want. The council shifts uncomfortable. They sense the tension. The silent war waged in polite phrases and lowered eyes. Catherine's mind moves behind her stillness. Calculating, remembering every slight is a debt. Every kindness a liability. A document is presented for her signature. She reads it carefully, letting the silence stretch. The king drums his fingers. Diane watches her, searching for weakness. Catherine signs with a flourish, her hand steady. The ink dries black and final. No one speaks of love in this room. Love is a currency spent, and spent again, until only power remains. The council adjourns. Diane lingers her perfume, a lingering accusation. You are most gracious, madame. She says, her tone heavy with meanings that do not require words. Catherine's reply is soft, almost tender. We do what we must, Madame de Poitiers. Her eyes never leave Diane's. The door closes behind them, and the court breathes again, uncertain who has won, only that the game is far from over. History remembers the crown. It rarely remembers the cost. There are nights when the past returns, unbidden, as sharp as the cold that seeps through stone walls. Catherine remembers Florence, the city of her birth, the city of her exile. She remembers the riot, the sudden violence, the convent doors barred against the mob. She was a child, then a Medici by blood, but a pawn in the hands of men who measured lives in coin and favor. She remembers the whispering nuns, the prayers offered not for salvation but for survival. She remembers hunger, not for food, but for certainty, for safety, for love, untainted by calculation. They called her the Little Duchess, but she was only a shadow, slipping between locked doors, listening to promises that dissolved before morning. One night the city burned. She watched from a high window, the flames reflected in her eyes. She learned that day that fire consumes, but it also forges. A vow was made silent and absolute. Never again powerless, never again unseen. Now in the gilded cage of the French court, she wears that vow like a second skin. The wound is hidden, but it shapes every word, every glance, every decision. She knows what it is to be forgotten. She knows what it is to survive. How far can a woman bend before she breaks? Evening falls, and with it, the temperature of the palace drops. The corridors are emptier now. The laughter muted the light, growing thin and uncertain. Catherine summons her most trusted attendant, a woman whose loyalty has been purchased not with affection, but with secrets. A message is to be delivered, not to the king, but to a lesser noble one, whose ambitions have always outstripped his caution. The instructions are precise, the consequences implied. There is talk of a land grant, of a marriage contract, of a favor owed, and soon to be repaid. The attendant departs, her footsteps silent on the stone. Catherine waits. She knows the machinery of power moves slowly, but when it moves, it crushes. Later in the Queen's private chapel, Diane appears unannounced, uninvited. The candlelight flickers, throwing both women's faces into half-shadow. Diane's voice is low, almost regretful. You cannot win him, not with your blood, nor with your prayers. Catherine does not answer at first. She studies the altar, the painted saints, the cold marble beneath her hand. Then softly, "I do not need to win him. I need only to outlast you." Diane's composure falters just for a moment. In that silence, something shifts, a recognition perhaps, or a warning. Diane leaves her footsteps echoing down the corridor. Each one a measure of time slipping away. The next day, the nobleman receives his summons. He enters the king's study. The door closes behind him, and he is never seen in court again. No accusations are made. No explanations are offered. The court understands the message without a single drop of blood described. The queen's power is not in what she says, but in what she allows to happen. That night, Catherine sits alone, her reflection fractured in the polished silver of her mirror. She touches the glass, as if searching for something lost, the candle gutters, and for a moment her face is a stranger's. History will call her ruthless. It will not see the necessity. It will not see the wound. The palace is quieter now. The storm has not passed, but it has moved elsewhere, leaving behind the hush of anticipation. Catherine walks the gallery alone, her footsteps lost in the vastness of painted ceilings and cold marble floors. She pauses before a tapestry. Eve in the garden, her hand outstretched to the serpent. The colors are faded, but the story endures. Temptation, betrayal, the price of knowledge. Catherine studies the scene, her expression unreadable. Outside, the fog thickens, pressing against the glass, erasing the world beyond. Inside the queen's heart is a locked chamber, its contents known only to herself. She returns to her chamber, extinguishes the candle, and sits in darkness. The silence is total, absolute. Somewhere a clock marks the hour, slow and relentless. A queen may hold the throne, but she is never truly safe. Not from her enemies, not from her memories, not from the shadow she has become. And as the night deepens, one question lingers colder than the stone beneath her feet. How many times can you betray yourself before there is nothing left to save? There is a kind of silence that feels intentional. The corridors of the Valois Palace are thick with it, as if the very stones have chosen to hold their breath. Candlelight pools on marble floors, flickering against tapestries that have seen more tears than triumphs. Somewhere, a clock marks the hour, soft, metallic, final. The air is heavy with the scent of burning tallow and cold iron, the perfume of power and its cost. A woman stands at a window, her silhouette carved in the pale dawn. Her hands rest on the sill, knuckles white against the chill. Beyond the glass, the gardens are shrouded in fog. Every hedge and statue blurred into uncertainty. She watches the world as if she expects it to betray her. Perhaps it already has. A letter lies open on the desk behind her. Its ink still drying, the words are careful, precise, and cruel in their necessity. In this palace, love is a ledger. Children are entries, assets, liabilities, debts to be collected or sold. Catherine de Medici does not weep. That would be a luxury. Instead, she counts the names of her sons beneath her breath, like a rosary of fragile hopes. Francis, Charles, Henry. Each one a prince, each one a pawn. The door closes softly behind her. but no one enters. The hush is absolute. The kind that gathers before a storm, when even the air seems afraid of what comes next. History remembers the crown. It rarely remembers the cost. The council chamber is colder than the stones beneath its tapestries. Men gather in subdued clusters, voices, muted eyes, glancing, not at her, never at her, but always around her. She sits at the head of the table, her face a study in restraint. The Queen Mother Regent in all but name. Her children's futures balanced on the edge of every sentence. Ambassadors from Spain and the Empire are present. Their words lacquered in courtesy. Their intentions sharp as razors. The matter is marriage. The matter is always marriage. Who will wed which prince? Which daughter will be bartered for peace, for alliance, for a moment's reprieve from the wolves at the door? Catherine listens. She weighs. She does not smile. The King of Spain will not wait forever. Madame. A refusal now. Cardinal de Lorraine leans forward, his hands folded, his voice low. A refusal now would be remembered longer than a marriage made in haste. She interrupts with the barest lift of her hand. Her words hang in the air, heavy with implication. There is no threat, only the certainty of consequence. To her right, the Duc de Guise watches her, with the patience of a man who has learned the cost of underestimating women. He says nothing, but his silence is a promise. He will remember how she handles this. A servant enters bearing a silver tray and a letter sealed in black wax. Catherine's eyes flicker just for a moment. The council notices. They always notice. The letter is from her eldest son, Francis, a boy king drowning beneath the weight of his own crown. The contents are unknown, but the message is clear. Every decision she makes will ripple through her bloodline, shaping the fate of France and of herself. She dismisses the council with a nod. No one protests. No one dares in the echoing emptiness. Catherine opens the letter. The words are desperate, pleading. Afraid, she smooths the parchment with a hand that does not tremble. She has learned to read between the lines, to see the threats that are never written, the bargains that are never spoken aloud. How far can a mother bend before she breaks? How many times can a heart be mortgaged before it is spent? Night in Florence, years ago. The city is a maze of stone and shadow. Its beauty, a mask worn over old wounds. In a convent cell, a child curls beneath a thin blanket, listening to the world outside, a world that wants her dead or worse, forgotten. She remembers the day the soldiers came, the pounding at the door, the nuns' faces pale with fear as they hid her beneath the altar, the smell of wax and dust, the prayers whispered in Latin, hurried, uncertain. She learned then that safety is a fiction, that even God can be bargained with if the price is high enough. Betrayal is not always loud. Sometimes it is the absence of a voice, the turning of a key, the silence after footsteps fade. She remembers the promise she made to herself alone in the darkness. Never again. She would not be powerless. She would not be forgotten. She would become the storm that others feared. That night, as the city burned with rumors and rivalries, Catherine de Medici was reborn not as a child of Florence, but as a survivor. And survivors do not weep. History remembers the queen, it forgets the orphan. The nursery is quiet, almost sacred. Sunlight slants through the windows, painting pale bars across the wooden floor. 3 children play beneath the watchful eyes of governesses. Francis Charles, Henry Innocence. For now, Catherine stands apart, her gaze fixed not on the children, but on their future. She knows what the court whispers, that a mother's love is a weakness, that her ambition is a poison. She knows, too, that every affection in this palace is conditional, every promise a blade. A messenger arrives bowing low. He brings news wrapped in velvet courtesy. The king's mistress, Diane de Poitiers, has petitioned for young Francis to be fostered at her estate for his education, for his health. The court expects Catherine to acquiesce. It is tradition, they say. It is for the good of France. Catherine listens, her face unreadable. She thanks the messenger. She dismisses the governesses alone with her sons. She kneels beside them, her voice soft but iron-edged. You will remember who you are. You will remember who loves you and who does not. She tells Francis, smoothing his hair. He nods, confused, trusting the other boys watch in silence. Children understand more than they are meant to. That night, Catherine writes a letter careful, measured, lethal in its restraint. She invokes the king's own words, the sanctity of royal blood, the dangers of removing a prince from his mother's care. The letter is delivered at dawn, its meaning clear to those who know how to read a threat, veiled as concern. When the door to the nursery closes the next day, Francis remains within Diane de Poitiers, receives no reply, only the absence of a child she had hoped to claim. The court understands the message. Though no blood is spilled, a mother's love can be both sanctuary and snare. Catherine has chosen. Her children will be pawns, but they will be hers. In the echoing corridors, rumors begin to shift. Some speak of the queen's coldness, others of her cunning. No one dares to say aloud. What everyone suspects, that the game has changed, and so has its master knight again, and the palace is a labyrinth of shadows. Catherine walks its halls alone, her footsteps muffled by ancient carpets. The letters are written. The alliances are set in motion. The children sleep unaware that their futures have been bartered for another day of safety. She pauses before a window, watching as the moon drifts behind a veil of clouds. Her reflection stares back, older than she remembers, colder than she wishes. She thinks of Florence, of whispered prayers and broken promises. She thinks of the price she has paid and the debt yet to come. Outside, a nightingale sings inside. Catherine de Medici counts her children's names, one by one, as if reciting a spell. History will call her many things, queen, mother, poisoner, pawn. But tonight, she is only a woman alone in the dark, waiting for the storm she has summoned. And somewhere in the silence, a question lingers unanswered. How long can a heart remain unbroken when it is made of stone? A crown sits on velvet, untouched, in a chamber where the candle flames burn low and steady, refusing to flicker. The walls, thick as vaults, press in with the kind of silence that feels intentional, beyond the stained glass. Paris exhales its breath of fog and rot. The Seine is a black ribbon winding through the city like a secret. In the heart of the Louvre, the air is heavy with the scent of old wax and colder ambition. Footsteps echo slow and deliberate across the stone. A figure stands at the window, her silhouette sharp against the pale dawn. She does not shiver, though the room is cold enough for breath to cloud. She is draped in black, the widow's mantle falling from her shoulders, its darkness swallowing every glint of color from the world around her. The courtiers wait clustered in alcoves, and behind half-closed doors, their whispers thin as spider silk. They watch her, the Queen Mother, and wonder what she will become now that the king is dead. Power here is a weight and a wound. It is not given. It is taken in increments, in glances, in the unspoken threats that pass between one candle and the next. She does not turn from the window. Instead, she watches the city wake eyes' unblinking hands folded in a gesture that is neither prayer nor surrender. She is alone, but not unseen. Shadows cling to her, as if the night itself is reluctant to leave her side. History remembers the crown. It rarely remembers the cost. The council chamber is colder than the crypt. Marble floors, polished by centuries of caution, reflect only the dull light of overcast morning. Here the air is thick with the scent of ink and the faintest trace of fear. Fear that neither the tapestries nor the gold can quite mask. Catherine sits at the head of the table, her black veil pulled low, her eyes unreadable. Around her the men of France, dukes, cardinals, ministers, shift in their seats, careful not to meet her gaze for long. They murmur condolences, offer platitudes, but their words are brittle, already crumbling in the air. The king is dead. The queen is a widow. The future is a question no one dares to answer aloud. A letter lies open before her, the seal broken, the ink still drying. It is a list of names. Some are circled, some are crossed out. Each mark is a verdict, though no verdict is spoken. She taps a gloved finger against the parchment, the sound impossibly loud in the hush. There are those who would see France torn apart before they see a woman hold the reins. She does not look up. They forget that a mother's love can be sharper than any blade. The Duc de Guise, his face carved from old grudges, leans forward. Madame, the Protestants grow bold. The crown sits uneasy. The people. She silences him with a glance. Not a word, not a gesture. Simply the weight of her attention, falling on him like a winter shroud. The people will follow the strongest hand. They always have. Silence, the kind that feels dangerous. She folds the letter slow and precise, as if folding away the future itself. You will find, my lords, that I do not tremble easily. I have buried too much to fear the living. The council understands. What is not said is understood more sharply than what is spoken. The woman before them is not the Italian girl they once dismissed as insignificant. She is the widow now, and the crown, however heavy, rests in her hands. Outside, the bells toll for the dead king. Inside, the living mark their allegiances with silence. Long before the widow's veil, before the sceptered halls and whispered threats, there was a child behind locked doors. Florence, 1529. The Medici palace besieged its windows, bricked its gardens, trampled by boots that cared nothing for beauty. Catherine remembers the taste of fear, how it settled on the tongue, metallic and persistent as she crouched beside a shuttered window. She remembers her nurse's arms trembling as much from hunger as from dread. The city outside was a battleground. Inside every hour was a negotiation with fate. They came for her once rebels, or perhaps simply men who had tired of obeying. She was 10 years old, a pawn for ransom or for slaughter, depending on the mood of the mob. A door splintered, a scream muffled by a hand. She learned then that mercy was not a virtue for the weak, but a privilege for the powerful. She survived. The city fell, and the Medici returned to their thrones. But something in Catherine did not return. It remained locked in that dark room, curled tight around a promise that she would never be powerless again. History remembers the survivor. It forgets the child who learned to wait in the dark. The king's death is a wound that does not bleed. It seeps into every chamber, every conversation, until even laughter sounds like mourning. The court so recently ruled by Henry's appetites and Diane de Poitiers' silvered whispers now orbits a new sun, one colder, more inscrutable. Catherine receives visitors in the Queen's apartments, where the air is thick with the perfume of lilies and the unspoken stench of ambition. Diane arrives veiled in black, her beauty undiminished by grief. The two women face each other across a gulf of memory and rivalry. Diane bows, but not deeply. "Your Majesty," she says, voice smooth as glass, "France mourns with you." Catherine does not smile. France mourns many things. Her gaze lingers on the jewels at Diane's throat gifts, from a king now dead, symbols of a love that had always cut Catherine like a knife. There are courtiers who watch this meeting, breath-held eyes bright with anticipation. They know that power is shifting, that old alliances are brittle as bone. Catherine's voice is soft. "You will return the crown jewels to the treasury. The chateau at Chenonceau will revert to the crown. My son is king now. The Queen Mother's authority is absolute." Diane's eyes narrow. "His Majesty is young. He will need guidance." Catherine's reply is a whisper, but it chills the room. "He will have it from me." There is no violence, no raised voices, only a door that closes quietly behind Diane de Poitiers. She will not return to court. The message is understood by Diane, by the courtiers, by every trembling shadow in the palace. The widow's mantle is not simply a garment. It is a weapon, honed on loss and wielded with precision. Catherine has learned at last to play God with what little the world has left her. Outside, the rain falls in relentless sheets, washing the city clean for a new reign. Night settles over the Louvre, pressing its weight into every stone and corridor. The candles burn low, their flames shivering in the draughts that slip beneath ancient doors. The palace is quiet, but it is not at rest. Catherine sits alone, the widow's black, pooling around her like spilled ink. The crown she has claimed gleams dully on the table before her, a thing of gold and iron, beautiful and pitiless. She does not touch it. Instead, she studies her reflection in the cold window glass. The city sprawls beyond indifferent to her triumph and her grief. In this silence, she allows herself a single breath of weakness. Her shoulders sag, her eyes close. She remembers a time before the mantle, before the endless calculations and betrayals. She wonders whether she has become the thing she once feared, or whether that thing was always waiting patient in the marrow of her bones. History will remember the widow's crown. It will not remember the cost. Outside, the bells toll once more, a sound that is neither mourning nor celebration, but something older, colder. A question unanswered echoing through the halls. How far can a woman bend before she breaks? Candlelight fractures against polished marble long. Trembling shadows stretch across the Salle des Caryatides. The air is thick, wax, velvet, and something sharper. Fear, perhaps, or anticipation. Here, in the heart of the Louvre, night is not a sanctuary. It is a stage. Footsteps echo, measured, deliberate, as if the ancient stones themselves are listening for secrets. Masks shimmer beneath chandeliers, faces half hidden, intentions wholly obscured. Laughter drifts like a wisp of smoke. It never reaches the eyes. In the hush between dances, silence becomes purposeful. A silence that presses against the ribs, that weighs on the tongue. This is not the silence of peace, but of calculation. A hand, gloved in black, traces the rim of a goblet. The wine inside is as dark as ink, as opaque as the mind behind the mask. Across the hall, a woman stands at the edge of the candlelight, her presence both invitation and warning. She is not named, not yet, but power radiates from her in cold, invisible waves. Her eyes do not search the room. They measure it. Every gesture is a cipher. Every glance a challenge. Tonight, the court wears its prettiest lies. Tonight, truth is a poison, best served behind closed doors. The music falters, resumes. The dance continues. But, in the spaces between, history sharpens its blade. It is late. The revelry has thinned. Only the most ambitious remain, the most cautious, the most dangerous. In a chamber lined with tapestries that muffle every sound, Catherine sits at a table. Unopened letters, half-melted candles. The flame distorts her shadow, twisting it across the wall. A queen with many faces, each more inscrutable than the last. A courtier enters. He bows so low his forehead nearly brushes the floor. He is young, clever, afraid. He speaks in riddles. Your Majesty, the Spanish ambassador lingers. He asks if the rumors are true. Catherine does not look up. Rumors multiply in darkness. Light only reveals the dust. He hesitates. They say, the Huguenots grow bold. That you? She lifts a hand. The gesture silences him, more effectively than any reprimand. Her voice is soft, almost gentle. What they say is less important than what they fear. He nods, eyes flickering toward the door, as if expecting the walls to whisper his secrets back to him. Catherine studies him, weighing loyalty against usefulness, fear against ambition. She knows the type, hungry for approval, terrified of irrelevance. Tell the ambassador that France is united. Tell him the Queen's hand is steady and her memory is long. He bows again, retreats into the corridor. The door closes with a muffled click. In the hush that follows, Catherine allows herself a single, measured breath. The court is a theater of masks, but the real game is played in the shadows behind the stage. Here, alliances are soldered not with affection, but with necessity. Here, trust is a dangerous luxury. A slip of parchment lies beneath her hand, its seal unbroken. She recognizes the handwriting, Diane's, looping and elegant. The kind of script that conceals as much as it reveals. Catherine does not open it, not yet. Some truths are better left to ferment. She rises, moves to the window. Paris sprawls beneath her, a city of lanterns and secrets. Somewhere in the labyrinth of streets, a plot is already unfolding. She can feel it, a tremor beneath the skin of the night. The Queen returns to her desk. She writes a single line, in ink as black as midnight. Trust no one who smiles too easily. She does not sign her name. She does not need to. In darkness, memory sharpens its teeth. She is 15 again, a child in Florence. The Medici palace echoing with footsteps that never pause at her door. The world is marble and shadow. Affection measured out in whispers and warnings. She learns early that love is a currency, and she is always in debt. There is a night, the kind of night that stains the soul. Soldiers storm the palace. Faces hidden, voices low. Catherine hides behind a tapestry, knees drawn to her chest, heart beating a frantic tattoo against cold stone. She hears her uncle's voice, brittle with authority, promising that she is safe. She knows it is a lie. When the danger passes, the silence that follows is heavier than any threat she understands. In that moment, that survival is not a gift. It is a bargain, one she will pay for, over and over, in trust, in innocence, in bloodless betrayals. From that night, she carries a lesson like a wound. Nothing is ever truly safe. No one is ever truly loyal. Not in Florence, not in France, not anywhere. The world is ruled by men and their appetites. She will become what she must. She will make her own bargains. She will not flinch from the cost. The mask continues, but the music has changed. Dancers whirl, oblivious to the undercurrents swirling beneath their feet. Catherine moves through the crowd, her smile a blade sheathed in velvet. Diane de Poitiers glides beside her, all pearls and poise, the king's emblem glittering at her throat. Her words are honeyed, her eyes unblinking. Majesty, you are radiant tonight. The court is grateful for your generosity. Catherine inclines her head, the gesture precise, almost mathematical. Generosity is the privilege of those who have nothing left to lose. They walk together, two constellations locked in silent orbit. Their rivalry is an old wound, dressed in silk and lace, but no less raw for its elegance. Diane leans in, voice a whisper meant only for Catherine. The Spanish ambassador is not as loyal as he appears, nor are your allies. The king has been persuaded to reconsider certain arrangements. A pause. The implication hangs in the air, heavy as a noose. Catherine's reply is almost a caress. Persuasion is a dangerous game. One never knows who will be convinced in the end. Diane's smile does not waver. We must all play our parts, must we not? The music swells, the moment passes, but beneath the surface, something fractures. Later, in the privacy of her study, Catherine summons her apothecary. No names are spoken. A vial changes hands, clear, odorless, promising only silence. A letter is sent, unsigned, to a certain noble whose loyalty has begun to waver. Its contents are brief, the handwriting unfamiliar. It promises a future, or the end of one. When the door closes, the palace understands the message. No one speaks of it. No one needs to. The next morning, a courtier fails to appear at breakfast. His rooms are empty, his servants silent. The court moves on, as it always does. But the fear lingers, a ghost in every corridor, a shadow at every feast. Catherine sits at the head of the table, hands folded, expression serene. She does not look at Diane, but she feels her gaze, a needle, a warning, a promise. The mask is over. The poison remains. Night deepens, pressing against the windows like a question no one dares to answer. The palace is quieter now. The laughter spent, the masks discarded. Only the queen remains, her candle burning low, her reflection wavering in the glass. She is alone, but never truly shadows gather in the corners, silent witnesses to her choices. The silence is no longer empty. It is full, swollen with consequence. Catherine touches the vial on her desk, its contents undisturbed. She wonders, not for the first time, how many futures have been decided by what is left unsaid, untouched, unknown. How many lives have turned on a gesture, a glance, a line of ink drying on parchment. History will remember the queen, the mask, the poison. It will not remember the cost. A gust rattles the window, the candle gutters in the hush that follows. Catherine closes her eyes, just for a moment. She allows herself to feel the weight, the dread, the hollow ache of power. How far can a woman bend before she breaks? The answer waits in the darkness, patient as fate. The night is not silent. It breathes beyond the leaded glass and the thick velvet drapes. Paris shivers beneath a fog that blurs all certainty. The moon is thin, a blade above slate rooftops, its light swallowed by the labyrinth of alleys and the hush of anticipation. Inside the Louvre, the air is colder than the stone candles gutter in their sconces, casting shadows that move when no one walks by. Tapestries hang heavy against the walls, muffling the sound of distant footsteps, the kind that never hurry, the kind that never need to. A woman stands at the window, her silhouette tall and motionless, fingers curled around a letter sealed in red wax. Her gown is black, edged in the white of mourning, a queen's sorrow worn like armor. Her face is unreadable, pale as the wax itself. She does not blink. She does not look away, below. The city waits, above. The court holds its breath, as if afraid to wake something sleeping in the walls. There is a silence here that feels intentional, as if the stones themselves remember. A silence that knows what is about to happen and will never speak of it. History will call her Catherine. But tonight, she is only the architect of dread. The council chamber is small, suffocating with the scent of ink and old ambition. Men sit around a polished table, their eyes flickering to the queen, and then away, as if afraid to see themselves reflected in her gaze. The air is thick with words that will never be spoken aloud. A young king sits at the head, his hands trembling beneath the tablecloth. He is Catherine's son, but tonight he is more pawn than prince. His signature is needed. His will is not. Catherine folds her hands, the letter unopened before her. She does not raise her voice. She does not need to. The city is restless. The Huguenots grow bold. They speak of justice, of revenge. Catherine's eyes do not leave him justice. It is a dangerous thing when defined by those who have nothing left to lose. Another voice, a bishop, white-haired and thin as a candle, leans forward, Your Majesty. If we do not act, there will be war. If we do, there will be peace. The lie hovers unchallenged, peace. The kind that comes only when no one is left to oppose it. Catherine's glance sweeps the room, cold and unblinking. She sees the fear, the ambition, the hunger. She sees men who would rather be remembered for their loyalty than for their hesitation. She lifts the letter. The wax cracks in her hand. Let the bells ring at midnight. Let Paris be cleansed of its fever. No one objects. No one dares. The king signs. The council disperses. Moving like ghosts through the corridors, each man carrying the weight of what he will not confess. Outside, the bells are silent. Inside, the queen's heart beats once, twice, a warning or a promise. History remembers the crown. It rarely remembers the cost. Years ago, in a Florence garden, a child learned the true nature of mercy. She was not yet queen. She was not yet feared. She was only Catherine, daughter of exile, watching as her cousin's laughter echoed through the hedges, carefree, careless, golden. She envied the sound, the lightness that came from never having to weigh one's own survival. Then the laughter stopped. A shadow fell across the path, and suddenly the world was smaller, colder. The Medici name was a curse that day, not a blessing. Friends vanished. Servants turned their faces away. The gates were locked. Catherine stood alone, her hands empty, her future uncertain. She learned that pity is a luxury for those who are never hunted. She learned that love is a promise made by the powerful and broken by the desperate. She made a vow, silent and secret beneath the cypress trees. Never again would she beg for mercy. She would become the hand that grants it or denies it. The shadow never left her. It only learned to walk beside her, silent and watchful. Midnight. The bells begin, slow, deliberate, echoing through the marrow of the city. Each note is a summons, a reminder, a sentence passed by unseen hands in the queen's chambers. The candlelight trembles, as if afraid. Catherine sits at her desk, composing a letter that will never be sent. Her words are measured, each stroke of ink a calculation, each pause a reckoning. She does not flinch as the shouts begin in the streets below. She does not move as the pounding of boots rises through the floor, as doors are splintered, as history's ink turns red beneath the surface. She has given no direct order. She has signed nothing but silence. Elsewhere in the palace, a Huguenot noble is summoned to a private audience. He expects clemency, or at least negotiation. He receives neither. The door closes behind him, and he is not seen again. In the city, windows are shuttered, prayers whispered behind locked doors. The river runs quietly, indifferent to what it will carry by morning. The court understands the message, though nothing is spoken. There are no accusations, no confessions, only the slow methodical turning of the knife, political, personal, irrevocable. Catherine watches the flames flicker, her face reflected in the glass. She thinks of Florence, of gardens, of laughter that once seemed endless. She thinks of mercy, and how easily it can become another name for power. When dawn comes, Paris will wake to a silence thick with ghosts. The queen's hands will be clean, but the stain will never fade. The night retreats, leaving behind a city that does not yet dare to breathe. Catherine stands alone in her chamber, the letter unsent, the candle burned low. She listens to the hush that follows every storm, the kind of silence that knows what has been lost, but will never say it aloud. She closes her eyes. The weight of the crown is heavier now, pressing down on bone and memory. She is a mother, a widow, a queen. She is also something else, something that history will not name. Outside, the river glimmers, carrying secrets beneath its skin. Inside, Catherine opens her eyes to the dawn unblinking. There is a rumor in Europe, louder than any confession, that the queen is made of stone, that her heart is colder than the marble of her halls. But history is rarely so honest. The candle gutters, and the silence grows. How far can a woman bend before she breaks? And when she does anyone hear the sound content? Candlelight drips down the walls of the Louvre, pooling in the hollows where tapestries once hung. The air is thick with the scent of old wax and colder secrets. Here shadows do not merely fall. They gather deliberate and watchful, as if summoned by the silence itself. A woman moves through these corridors, her steps muffled by carpets, worn thin by centuries of ambition. She wears black, not for mourning, but for armor. Each fold of velvet, a small confession of loss. Her hands are gloved white against the darkness, fingers stained faintly with ink. She has been writing all night, letters, edicts, instructions, words that will travel farther than she ever can, words that will outlive her. Her name is not spoken here, not with affection, not with hope. Catherine. To some, the Italian, to others, the widow, to most, the regent. Though the title is hollow, echoing in the vastness, like a question no one dares to answer. Outside, Paris breathes in fog and exhales suspicion. Inside, the court waits. They watch her pass, eyes lowered, lips pressed shut. No one bows too deeply. No one lingers in the halls after dusk. The king is a boy, and the woman who rules for him is a mother, only in name, a queen only in memory, a regent only in the absence of all else. Tonight, she will make choices in rooms colder than crypts, beneath portraits that never quite meet her gaze. The throne is empty, but the labyrinth is full. Every step she takes echoes down corridors lined with betrayal. Every candle burns down to a wick of dread. This is not power. This is survival. Sharpened to a point, the council chamber is colder than the corridors. Stone walls drink the warmth from every breath, and the tapestries do little to muffle the tension. A handful of men sit at the long table, eyes flickering between the empty throne and the woman who stands at its shoulder. Catherine's presence is a study in restraint. Her voice measured her gaze, unwavering, her lips never trembling, except in private. "We must act," says the Duc de Guise. His words clipped his hands, folded over a document he will not let go. "The Protestants gather in the south. If we wait, the crown will dissolve in our hands." Catherine meets his eyes, the silence between them, deliberate, almost cruel. She does not blink. "The crown is not sugar, monsieur. It does not dissolve so easily." A faint, humorless smile flickers at the corners of his mouth, gone before it can be mistaken for warmth. Around the table, the others shift in their seats, each calculating the cost of silence, each measuring the distance between obedience and ambition. The boy King Charles sits at the far end, fingers drumming restlessly on the arm of his chair. He is 14, and already he knows how to disappear inside his own skin. Catherine speaks again, her words softer now, more dangerous for their quiet. We will send envoys. We will promise peace. We will buy time. Guy's jaw tightens, but he says nothing. He knows, as they all do, that time is a currency. Catherine spends with care. She measures every concession, every lie against the weight of her children's lives. There is a letter on the table sealed in black wax. No one mentions it. The message inside is clear. Loyalty is provisional, and trust is a luxury none can afford. The meeting ends not with a decision, but with a dispersal. Men slip out in silence, leaving the Queen alone with the echo of their doubts. She stands by the window, watching the city dissolve into mist. Every light in Paris is a reminder she rules nothing but uncertainty. History remembers the crown. It rarely remembers the cost. Night brings no rest, only memory. She remembers Florence, the city of her birth, where stone lions guarded the gates, and laughter was always edged with warning she was a child of exile. The Medici orphan passed from hand to hand, like a coin too valuable to spend. She learned early that affection was conditional, that safety was a story told to comfort the weak. There was a night she was 7 when the city rose against her family. Men with torches, faces masked by anger, stormed the convent where she slept. The nuns hid her in a chest of old vestments, pressed her down beneath the weight of brocade and incense. She heard the doors splinter. She heard the prayers turn to screams. She learned in that suffocating dark that survival is a matter of silence and patience. No one came for her. Not then, not ever. The lesson lingered: trust no promise, love no throne. Wear every kindness like a borrowed cloak, ready to be surrendered at a moment's notice. This is the shadow she carries stitched into every seam of her black velvet gown. A wound that never quite closes. A vow made in the dark, never to be powerless again. The labyrinth is not made of stone. It is made of people, of shifting alliances, whispered threats, and corridors that end in locked doors. Tonight, Catherine walks its length with the surety of one who has mapped every blind corner. She moves from chamber to chamber, her face inscrutable, her words chosen with surgical care. In a small candle-lit room, she finds the Comte de Tavannes, a man whose loyalty is as reliable as the weather. He stands when she enters, bowing just enough to be polite, not enough to be trusted. "There are letters," she says. Voice barely above a whisper, "From Navarre, plans for insurrection." He does not ask how she knows. He does not ask what she wants. The rules are understood. Information is currency, and Catherine is the banker. "You will deliver a message," she continues, sliding a folded parchment across the table. "No signature, no seal. If it is traced, you were never here." He takes the letter, eyes lingering on her face, searching for something: mercy, perhaps, or fear. He finds neither, Do you trust me, madame? He asks, the question a blade wrapped in velvet. She considers him for a long moment. I trust necessity. He leaves footsteps fading into the hush. The door closes behind him, soft as a confession. What happens next will not be spoken of. The court will wake to rumors, to disappearances, explained by illness, or travel, or divine will. The king's enemies will find their plans unraveling their allies, suddenly absent, their courage dissolving like sugar in tea. Catherine returns to her chambers where the fire has burned low. She sits at her desk, hands trembling only when no one is watching. She writes another letter, this one in her own hand, the ink smudged by the weight of what she cannot say. She signs it with a single initial. There will be no record, no trace. When the door closed, the palace understood the message. No one is untouchable. Dawn arrives without ceremony. The city stirs oblivious to the decisions made in the night. In the Queen's chambers, the candles have burned down to threads, leaving the air heavy with the scent of spent hope. Catherine sits alone, her back to the window, watching the patterns of ash and dust on the floor. She is not weeping, she is not praying. She is waiting for news, for consequences, for the next choice that will cost her another piece of herself. The boy king will ask no questions. The council will offer no thanks. Her enemies will grow more careful, more desperate. The labyrinth will twist, and she will walk it again and again, until there is nothing left but corridors and silence. History will remember her as a poisoner, a schemer, a shadow behind the throne. It will not remember the nights spent alone, the ink-stained hands, the choices made in rooms colder than tombs. How far can a woman bend before she breaks? The candle gutters, the ash settles. And somewhere in the palace a door closes softly, as if to keep the truth from ever escaping. This is the cost of ruling nothing. Candlelight moves like a ghost across the black marble floor. The flame, small and shivering, throws shadows that stretch and recoil against the walls. Walls heavy with tapestries, secrets, and the scent of old dust. There is fog outside, pressed up against the leaded glass, smothering the world in a hush that is not peace but expectation. In the heart of the Louvre, silence is never innocent. It is the kind of silence that feels intentional, as if the stones themselves are waiting for someone to confess. A figure sits at a desk, her back straight, her hands pale and still against a letter sealed in black wax. The ink is not yet dry. The words, her words, will outlast the night, as so few things do. Her hair is threaded with gray, but her eyes burn with a cold lucidity. She does not tremble. Not anymore. On the table beside her, an alchemist's mirror glimmers, a disk of polished obsidian, rimmed with gold, brought from a land where the sun is harsh and the gods are silent. It reflects nothing but the candle's flame and the watcher's own face, fractured and doubled in the blackness. She watches herself watching behind her. The corridor yawns, empty, echoing with memories that will not die tonight. Catherine de Medici is alone, not abandoned, alone by design. The palace is a labyrinth, and she is its minotaur. Waiting at the center with her secrets and her regrets, the hour is late, and the world is reduced to inkstone and the flickering promise of revelation. She does not believe in omens, yet tonight she listens for them in the silence. In the hush between heartbeats, in the way the candle gutters uncertain, the mirror waits, as patient as guilt. In this chamber, history is not written, it is conjured one breath at a time. The door opens without a sound. The man who enters is careful, deferential as if approaching a sleeping lion. He bows, but not too deeply. No one bows deeply to a queen who might fall at any moment. Catherine gestures to the chair opposite her. There is no warmth in the invitation. Her gaze is steady, her voice low. You have news, not a question. A command. The man, a secretary, a pawn. A pair of eyes loyal to the highest bidder, places a folded letter on the table. His hands do not shake, but his eyes flicker to the mirror, as if afraid it might show him something he cannot bear. From the south, Majesty, the Huguenots gather again. The king's advisors urge action. Catherine's fingers curl around the letter. She does not open it. The words inside are already known to her. In this court, nothing is truly secret. Only delayed, distorted, returned with interest. What would you advise? Her tone is mild, almost bored. The test is not in what he says, but in how he says it. He chooses his words with the precision of a surgeon. The realm is weary of blood. But weakness, madame, is remembered longer than mercy. A pause. The candle crackles. The mirror reflects his face, washed pale and uncertain. And if I choose mercy? Catherine asks, voice as soft as falling ash. He hesitates. Then, Majesty, you must be prepared to pay for it yourself. There it is, the threat, wrapped in velvet. Catherine's smile is thin, unreadable. She has spent a lifetime learning that mercy is a luxury for men with armies and heirs. She dismisses him with a glance. The door closes, muffling his footsteps. The court will wonder what passed between them. They will imagine poison, or plots or promises. They will be wrong. In the echoing silence, Catherine turns the letter over in her hand. Her rings catch the candlelight, scattering it across the table like shards of broken glass. History remembers the crown. It rarely remembers the cost. There are nights when memory slips its leash and prowls the corridors of the mind. Tonight, Catherine lets it. Florence, a lifetime ago. The Medici Palazzo, white and cold as a reliquary. She is a child. Face pressed to the marble, listening to the whispers that slide beneath the doors. Orphan, usurper, pawn. The city riots outside, chanting for a Medici's blood. Inside, the silence is worse, thick with the knowledge that no one will come. Not for her. She remembers the taste of fear, how it dries the mouth, how it makes the pulse drum in the throat. She remembers the promise she made in that darkness as the city howled and the walls trembled to survive. Whatever the cost, to become the silence that others fear. In Paris, years later, they called her foreign baron, insignificant. She learned to smile without showing her teeth. She learned that love is a mask, and loyalty is a blade pressed to the ribs. She learned that a woman's power is always borrowed, always provisional, always at risk of being revoked. She learned to keep her secrets close and her enemies closer. Tonight, she remembers the child in Florence, the bride in Paris, the queen in the labyrinth. Each one a shadow, layered atop the other, indistinguishable now. This is the wound she carries. This is the shadow she has become. The night deepens. The candle burns lower. Its light feverish and uncertain. Catherine sits unmoving, the unopened letter before her, the mirror at her side. She reaches for a second letter, this one written in a cipher. Only she and her astrologer understand. The handwriting is precise, the message brief. The stars are hostile. Beware the month's end. Trust no one. She laughs quietly, without mirth. Trust. The word is a luxury, like hope. There is a knock at the door. Soft, deliberate, a signal, not a request. Catherine does not look up as her lady-in-waiting enters. Eyes lowered. Madame, Diane de Poitiers requests an audience. Diane. The name is an old wound, reopened, the king's mistress. The rival, who outshone her in youth, in beauty, in influence. The woman who taught her that love is a game, played with other people's hearts. Catherine nods. Send her in. Diane enters as if she owns the room. Her hair is silver now, but her poise is unbroken. The two women regard each other across the gulf of years and grievances. We are old, Diane, and the world is not kind to old women, Catherine says. Voice flat, the world is never kind. We have only survived it. There is no pretense tonight, no courtesies, no veils, only two survivors circling each other in the ruins of their ambitions. I hear you seek the alchemist, Diane says, eyes flicking to the mirror. Do you hope for prophecy or absolution? Catherine's answer is a whisper. I hope for clarity. Diane leans in her voice low. Clarity is for those who can afford to see themselves. Can you? The question hangs in the air, sharp as a knife. Catherine stands, suddenly weary. We are both ghosts, Diane, but I am the one who haunts this palace. Diane's expression does not change, but something in her eyes flickers. Fear, or pity, or perhaps recognition. The conversation is over. Diane bows, a gesture that is both concession and farewell. She leaves without another word. When the door closes, the court understands. The old alliances are broken. The queen has chosen her solitude. Her secrets, her mirror. No blood is spilled, no voices raised, but the message is clear. The labyrinth has claimed another victim. The candle is almost gone. The room is colder now, the fog pressing harder against the glass. Catherine sits before the mirror, watching her own reflection dissolve into darkness. She thinks of the letter, still unopened, of the ciphered warning, of the faces that haunt her child bride queen, widow mother rival. She wonders if she has become the monster the world needed, or merely the one it deserved. Outside, the palace sleeps, unaware of the decision that has been made. The silence is absolute. The labyrinth is sealed for the night. Catherine presses her fingers to the mirror's surface. It is cold, unyielding. It shows her nothing but the face she cannot escape. History will remember her as a queen, a poisoner, a mother of monsters. But history does not know what she sees in the glass. The candle dies, the darkness lingers, And somewhere in the silence, a question remains. How far can a woman bend before she breaks? Stone breathes cold beneath the weight of centuries. In the labyrinth of the Louvre, where torchlight crawls across faded frescoes, and the air tastes of old secrets, a single candle gutters on a writing desk. Its flame trembles, half hope, half warning, casting the shadow of a woman across the paneled wall. She does not move, not yet. The silence is thick, the kind that feels intentional. As if every echo has been banished by decree, ink stains her fingers. The page before her is almost full, but she hesitates. Outside, fog presses against the glass, a pale hand smearing the world beyond into ambiguity. The corridors behind her are empty, swept clean of courtiers and confession, but the walls remember. They always remember. Somewhere, a clock marks the hour, not with a chime, but with the faintest click-a reminder that time is a patient predator. The candle's light reveals the glint of a signet ring, the Medici crest dulled by years of friction and fear. She wears it still, though its power is now only ceremonial. In this hush, surrounded by the scent of old wax and colder stone, she is both queen and captive. Every word she writes is a negotiation with posterity. History is not written in thunder. It is written in moments like this, a woman alone deciding what will be remembered and what will be left to rot in the dark. The council chamber is smaller than memory would have it. Once, it was the heart of a kingdom, pulsing with ambition, thick with breath and calculation. Now, it is merely a room, its grandeur, diminished by absence. Tapestries hang limp, their colors faded to the palette of old bruises. The men who remain are careful with their voices. They speak in half-truths, their words, chosen with the precision of surgeons. Catherine listens. She has learned that silence is a weapon sharper than any blade. Her face is unreadable, a mask polished by decades of necessity. The men address her as Majesty, but their eyes flicker to the door as if expecting someone younger, someone more malleable. They do not say it, but the message is clear. Your time is passing. Yield, and do so quietly. She does not yield. Instead, she asks a question, soft, almost idle. The kind of question that makes a man reconsider the entire conversation. And if we do nothing? She murmurs, her accent still threaded with the ghost of Florence. If we allow history to decide for us. The chancellor shifts in his seat. His hands are folded, but his knuckles are white. France must move forward. Madame, the world will not wait for morning. She smiles slow and cold. The world, she repeats, as if tasting the word for poison. The world is not a courtier. It does not bow, it devours. A pause. The Duke of Guise clears his throat, but the sound is swallowed by the room. No one mentions the rumors about poison, about letters intercepted and never delivered, about the children whose names have become bargaining chips. The court has learned to survive by omission. Catherine's gaze settles on a ledger at the center of the table. Names, debts, alliances, each a thread in the tapestry she has spent a lifetime weaving, each a liability, now that her hands are shaking. She closes the book with a deliberate motion. The sound is final, but her meaning is not. History remembers the crown, she says, her voice barely above a whisper. it rarely remembers the cost. The men are dismissed. They leave with the relief of those spared for another day. The door closes behind them, and the candle flickers in the sudden draught. Catherine is alone again, surrounded by the ghosts of her own making. Memory is a treacherous servant. It arrives, unbidden, dragging Florence's marble corridors into the present. She is 12 again, a child in a city that loves beauty, but not orphans. Her uncle's hand is heavy on her shoulder, his smile as thin as the blade he keeps beneath his cloak. The Medici name is a shield, but also a target. She learns early that affection is a transaction, that survival is not inherited, but earned. There is a night, she remembers it, with a clarity that aches, when the city rose against her family. The bells tolled not for prayer, but for blood. She was hidden in a convent, the prayers of the nuns, a trembling barrier against the mob outside. Each hour she listened for footsteps. Each hour she wondered if her name would be the last word she heard. She survived. She always survived. But something was left behind in those stone corridors, the certainty that love is fragile, and that power is the only true sanctuary. Years later, when she was sent to France, a bride upon a foreigner, she carried that lesson like a second skin. Trust was a luxury. She has not indulged it since. Even now, the court moves in shadows. News arrives on folded parchment, the seals broken by invisible hands before they reach her. Tonight, there is a letter, unsigned, but the handwriting is unmistakable. It is not the words that matter, but the absence behind them. An invitation to step aside, wrapped in the language of concern. A warning disguised as courtesy. Catherine reads it twice, then burns it over the candle. The wax spits, the flame flares. And something unspoken is decided. She summons her secretary, her voice steady, her instructions. Precise, there will be no open confrontation. That is not her way. Instead, a series of quiet conversations, a favor recalled. A debt pressed there. A rumor allowed to blossom in the right ear, a threat implied in a look that lingers a moment too long. She does not need to raise her voice. The court is fluent in suggestion. That night, a courier is seen leaving by a side gate. He does not return. The next morning, the council finds that certain documents have vanished. The Duke of Guise receives a message with no signature, only a single black ribbon. He does not sleep for 3 nights. The court understands the message, though no accusation is spoken. Catherine's power is not in what she does, but in what she might do. Fear is her currency, and she spends it with care. In her private chapel, she kneels alone. Her prayers are silent, her hands cold. She has made her choice. The cost is not measured in blood, but in the tightening ring of isolation. When the door closes behind her, the palace understands the queen will not go quietly. Dawn seeps through the high windows. Colorless and indifferent, the candle has burned to a stub. The wax pooled like a wound on the desk. Catherine sits unmoving, the letter she never sent lying open before her. The words are simple. They are not enough. She is tired, bone-tired, soul-tired, but she will not sleep. There is too much to remember, too much to regret. The corridors outside are quiet, but she knows the silence is only temporary. The world does not wait for morning. She rise, sure footsteps echoing in the emptiness. History's sentence is not delivered with fanfare or fury. It is written in ash and dust in the spaces between words, in the names that are erased and the truths that are never spoken. As she passes through the hall, the shadows lengthen behind her. The Medici ring is heavy on her hand. She does not look back. In the end, history will remember the crown. It will not remember the woman who wore it, but the stones remember. And sometimes, in the quiet, they whisper her name